Awesome. Wow, it's pretty loud. You could bring me down a little bit. How's everybody doing tonight? Good? Awesome. All right, so no videos. We're going to run right into this. I felt during worship, before we get started on the message, and thank you guys again for coming out tonight. I'll honor your time. We'll only go 3 hours, but no, I'm just kidding. I just felt like God was putting it on my heart. I was listening to a pastor today while I was studying, and something he was saying is we live in a society today where everybody is noticed for their strengths. Everybody, you walk around and it's our strengths that is what we are known by, and our weaknesses are something that are hidden away. And if we all just were able to understand that our weaknesses are something that God uses us through, I think our society and us as a church family will be able to come together understanding that everybody's messed up, man. I mean, and that was, I mean, it's the truth, and some people don't want to hear it, but it will set you free. And our weakness is when he works complete and strong in our lives. And so I feel like somebody needed that tonight. So now we will get into this. Tonight my sermon is called, it's up here, The Fundamentals of Expectancy. And so before we get into this, kind of the goal that I want to get tonight is talking about having a heart of expectancy. Again, it's something that in our lives we can be okay, we can be stagnant with where we're at, we can be okay with where we're at. God uses us with where we're at, but when we have a heart of expectancy for something to come, it will drastically change our life. I think in our church, right now, I feel like God is about to do something huge. I don't know if you guys feel it, but I feel like I'm expectant for something that God's going to do, and I want to be ready. Expectant doesn't mean we sit around and wait. Expectant means we prepare our house, we prepare our storehouses for what God's about to give to us. And so with that, I'm going to pray. Jesus, we just thank you for tonight. We thank you for being expectant of what you're going to do in our lives, what you're going to do in our city, what you're going to do in this house, Jesus. We thank you for every single person that's here tonight. We thank you that the Spirit can speak through me, Jesus, and that this can reach, if not anybody, just one person tonight, Jesus. We love you, and we thank you for the honor and privilege to be here and worship you freely. We love you, and we thank you. In your name we pray. Amen. Awesome. All right. So tonight we are going to start reading out of Genesis. We're going to be looking over the lives of Noah. That's really where we're going to focus on tonight. We're also going to go a little bit into the Israelites. I like to compare the Israelites to us. They're kind of crazy. They don't really learn the first time or the second time or the third time, but it's awesome because guess what? Jesus loves them. And so we're going to dive in here. Genesis chapter 6, verse 8. And it says this, "But Noah found favor in the eyes of the Lord." This is interesting to me because I'm like, well, how did he find favor? I want to know how he did it because I want to do it, right? I feel like each and every one of us, like Pastor Rob preached on Sunday, we have favor, right? The favor factor. But how did Noah find favor in the eyes of the Lord? Maybe you guys are like, well, he must have been awesome. He must have been, a good dude. And you know what? As we read on, we're going to talk about he was an awesome guy, but guess what? He had issues just like the rest of us. And so this word favor, in my Bible, I use the NASB, and it has the Hebrew and Greek, whatever. In the back, it gives you all the words. I'm blanking right now. But I actually looked up this word favor today because I wanted to know, there has to be a reason they mentioned it. I want to know what kind of favor Noah had in the time he lived in when the flood was coming. And so it says right here, the word is Khan, is how you pronounce it in the Hebrew, and it is graciousness. It is a subjective or objective. It means favor or grace. A masculine noun meaning favor, grace, acceptance. It stands as the fundamental application of this word, meaning an unmerited favor or regard in God's sight. So it wasn't favor because Noah did it all. It wasn't favor because Noah had all the answers. It was an unmerited favor, an undeserved favor that Noah was given because Jesus loved him. And so we're going to keep going here. Verse 9, it says this. "These are the records of the generations of Noah. Noah was a righteous man, blameless in his time." Again, another really interesting thing, seeing that Noah, we know, had a problem with drinking. He was a drunkard. We know he ran into issues with this. But guess what? In the eyes of Jesus, we're all blameless. "In his time, Noah walked with God, and Noah became the father of 3 sons. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That's 3, if you know math. All right. Now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. Again, you guys might think, man, well, our society today is kind of on the road for this same kind of ending with how crazy it is. But we're under a new covenant. We'll get into that in a little bit too. And so now the earth was corrupt in the sight of God, and the earth was filled with violence. And God looked on the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted their way upon earth. Then God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. And behold, I'm about to destroy them with the earth. It's kind of harsh. Okay, make for yourself an ark of gopher wood. You shall make the ark with rooms. Okay, we know all the information. We're gonna skip down a little bit to verse 17 for time's sake. And behold, I, even I, bringing the flood water upon the earth to destroy all flesh, in which is the breath of life from under heaven. Everything that is on earth shall perish. But I will establish my covenant with you, and you shall enter the ark, and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives, and all that goodness. Awesome. Okay, verse 22. Noah did according to all that God had commanded him, so he did. So again, Noah was given direction by God. God said, hey, the flood's going to come. It says in here, some people get it mixed up. It says the days of men are 120 years. Some people think, oh, that means that our life expectancy is 120 years. But what it was a 120-year timetable that God gave Noah, that the flood was coming in 120 years. And he gave him, it's really interesting when you break this down, because the timetables, which we're going to go over, of when God told Noah to build the ark and when God told Noah the flood was coming, is not the same time. And so we're going to jump to chapter 7, and that is verse 6. Noah was 600 years old when the flood of water came upon the earth. So when God is talking to Noah in the chapter before, Noah is 500. He's not even 500 years old. He's 480 years old. So he says, right, you're going to bear sons, 3 of them, and then the flood is going to come. All this craziness is going to happen. And so we pick up 480 years. Imagine being told in 120 years, we obviously don't live that long now. Imagine being told, hey, in 70 years, I'm going to flood the earth, but I need you to be ready. I don't know if in today's society we would be able to handle that. And so Noah knew and was expectant of something that was going to happen. He couldn't do anything to control it. He couldn't do anything to bring it sooner. It was 120 years. So now it was up to Noah to make a few choices in his life if he was going to build an ark or if he was going to die. It's a matter of him believing first that God wasn't lying to him and acting on the belief he had. And so we're going to get into the 3 fundamentals of expectancy, and the first one is faith. And so we're going to get into the timetable a little later. I don't want to mess myself up here. Faith. So we're going to go to Proverbs 3, 5 through 6, and it says this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your path straight. Again, this is a really, a verse we hear every day in church, a verse that you've probably heard 100 times over. And it's really interesting to me is because it's about trusting in God with what he says, what he gives us. Because in our lives, the limitations that we set are as high as our human knowledge will let us go. Because we clearly don't have an understanding like God does of everything, right? I'm pretty sure the God of the universe who knows everything knows a little bit more than us. And so in our lives, if we're dependent on what we know, we're going to set a limitation based on where we've been or what we've been through. And we're going to set a ceiling on what God can do in our lives or what God's going to do. And if we've never built an expectation for anything bigger than our own mind's capacity, then how can we expect to grow or let God stretch us into something new? We have to let go of what we think we know and step into what God has for us and what God knows. And so, again, we need to expect from the knowledge God has and the knowledge he's given us, and that is to expect the unexpected. And this is something I wrote. This is something God gave me. It says, God moves the most when we are least involved, yet most expecting. Because so many times we're expecting something to happen. So now, okay, guys, the whole family's coming over for Christmas. Here we go. We have to get the house ready, right? We get all involved. We get really stressed out about it. It doesn't get done. And I mean, how many of us know Christmas with all the family? It's pretty crazy. and it's not what you expect. But when you have an expectation of something and you try to do your own thing and you try to impose your own power and your strengths because, we can do it all because, we know it all, we'll realize it's just we're not going to go to the full capacity that God has for us. So, when God told Noah he was going to flood the earth, it was 120 years before it was going to happen. He did not tell Noah to build the ark until nearly 50 odd years before the flood was coming. So imagine being told, hey, in 120 years, I'm going to flood the earth and everybody's going to die. Right? And nothing else. Now it's on Noah to have faith that God's going to provide him a way out of his trouble and not on him to try to do something. Right? Because how many of us know if God was like, okay, in 100 years this is going to happen, but I need you to do this, build the ark, we would build the ark probably last minute. We'd probably procrastinate. Pretty sure that's how we would do it. That's how I would do it at least. And so what God does is he wants to see Noah's faith and say, hey, I'm going to flood the earth. I need you to trust me. Right? And God gave Noah a whole elaborate plan. He said, you need to wait for your sons to grow old enough to have wives, and then you need to build the ark. So there was roughly a 50 to 75 year window before the flood where Noah had to build the ark. So before that, it was a test of his faith. And man, I know me in today's society, I don't even have faith for the Starbucks workers to get my drink right, let alone have faith for God to give me a plan to get out of the struggle I'm in. And so the first point, again, the three fundamentals of expectancy is faith. And so we go down to our second point, which is action. And again, these points are pretty basic. There's probably something you've heard time and time again. Yeah, we all know we have to have faith. We all know we have to have action. I'm pretty sure there's a group called Faith in Action in the city. I didn't take it from them. No, and so you may think, yeah, it's faith. I got to have faith. But when was the last time we had faith for something that seemed so out of reach? It was nearly impossible. Because a lot of times I have faith, oh man, I hope my football team wins. I have faith in them. That's not faith that's going to stretch me or grow me in an area of my life that I need. Having faith for something that I honestly don't see is something that will really shift you, man, and it will really take you somewhere. So the second point is action. And we're going to go to James chapter 2, verse 8. And it says this, but someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. And so you may think, man, I thought, we're under the grace message. What's this whole deal with works? And from the naked eye reading this, it's like, okay, so we know we have to have faith, and it doesn't matter with our works to have salvation. But when we read this closer, it blew my mind. Someone will say, you have faith and I have works. Show me your faith apart from your works, and I'll show you my faith by my works. And so what this meant to me is a lot of times we think, okay, if we do enough, if we act enough, we're going to have faith. I'm going to do it. If I go to church enough, if I go to church 3 times this month and go 2 Wednesdays, God's going to give me the faith, and I'm going to have it. I'm going to do it. Right? If I check all the boxes, if I don't sin this week, if I don't say a curse word this week, man, God's going to really bless me with the faith. When we have it totally flipped, I think we do a pretty good job at that in our society, is flipping the way things are supposed to be. And God is saying, the way you live your life is determined on the faith you have for God in the situation. And again, we can't have faith if we don't understand who God is in our lives. We're only going to have enough faith with maybe what we've been through or how we understand God. So how do we get more faith? Understand who God is in your life. That means spend time with him. The only way I understand my father's heart, my dad's heart, if he's really mad at me or maybe he's not, is spending time with him, knowing his heart. It's the same thing with God. We can't, it's crazy. I can go for a minute on this one, man. Awesome. So again, the way we live our lives, the people you see out here picking up benches and picking up chairs, they're not doing it so they get blessed. They're not doing it so they'll have faith this week. They're doing it because they have faith that God's brought them somewhere and going to bring them somewhere more. So they're doing it as a praise to him. So now we're going to look at some people who are kind of like me. Again, everything I do, it's inward, and it messes with me every single time. God loves doing that to me, but it's awesome. And we're gonna look at the Israelites. So again, we're sticking with Noah, but we're gonna take a little detour here and look at the Israelites here. And man, they're a crazy bunch. So they've been brought from Egypt. They've been saved. They've been freed. And now God tells them, go and take this land that I've given you. Man, that's pretty, what more do you need, right? It's like, hey, here you go. Take this, take the land. It's all yours. Here's $100 for gas. Hop in your car and just go. It's waiting. But how many of us know, if you know the story, if you don't, the Israelites like to do things the way we like to do things, and they like to do it their way, right? They like to, you know what? Well, I think I'm gonna take the lead on this one. God, I know you just saved us, and you saved our lives and all that, but I think I'm going to do this one. And he's like, all right. So Deuteronomy 1:26-28 says this. This is the Israelites having their little dialogue here because they're afraid to go into the promised land because there's giants and there's some enemy. But you were unwilling to go up. You rebelled against the command of the Lord your God. You grumbled in your tents. Man, how many of us like to grumble? That's me all day. You grumble in your tents and said, the Lord hates us. So he brought us out of Egypt to deliver us into the hands of the Amorites to destroy us. So God just saved them from Egypt and said, have this land. And they're so ridiculous that they say, oh, God just wanted to save us so we could die by the Amorites in the promised land. Like as if God's just trying to trick them into, he could have killed them years ago, right? And so they're so ridiculous to put their own ideas, their own minds into the situation. And man, they just really mess themselves up here. Where can we go? Our brothers have made our hearts melt in fear, they said. The people are stronger and taller than we are. The cities are large with walls up to the sky. We even saw the Anakites there. Everything. It's all from their fleshly perspective. It's from what they see through their eyes, not what they see through their faith in God, and not what they see through his eyes. Because God gave them the land. He never said it was just you're going to walk in there, but he said, anybody in there, I've delivered them to you. They're already pretty much defeated. Just go in there and fight them. We're going to kill them. What more do you need? And it's crazy, but the biggest thing about the Israelites being in the wilderness for 40 years is that God still favored them. He still blessed them every day. He provided for them. A lot of us are okay. We're in this place where, and this is me, sometimes I'm in this place where I'm like, okay, this is nice. This is comfortable. Manna's coming every morning. It's good. We got to go. We don't have to go fight anybody. We're hanging out. We got the warm Krispy Kremes, like Pastor Ken says. He thinks manna was Krispy Kreme. It's awesome, right? We're comfortable. And there's a really thin line of being content and ready to move on into something new and being stagnant where you are and being comfortable. Because the times when you're most comfortable are the times when you're most vulnerable. And, I'm an Atlanta Falcons fan. If you watch football, they blew the biggest lead in the Super Bowl history. They were comfortable with where they were at. And guess what? They were vulnerable. And, that's them. All right, and the Israelites. Let's get back to the Bible. All right, so the Israelites didn't take action because they didn't have faith in what God said he would do. It's all about trust, everything we do. We wake up every day and go to our jobs. We get in our cars having faith that we're going to get there safely, have an expectancy that we're going to arrive to our destination. But then we're okay to live these nice, comfortable, cushy lives because it's good, right? We're going to just be here. I know God promised me everything. He has all these blessings for me. But I'm just going to hang out here because it's nice and safe. And I won't have to fight any battles. And so when we are in the wilderness of life, God will still bless us. Again, he continued to feed the Israelites. He made sure they had all their stuff, but they held themselves from 40 years in the land they were promised because of them. And I'm sure there's so many times in my life where I could have excelled and gone above the bar, but I was okay with being okay. I was okay with being good. And the biggest stopper of people being great is being okay with being good, because it's comfortable, because you don't have to push extra. Like the last time I spoke, I shared the story of when I played water polo, and my coach would always tell us there's more in the tank, and you never understood what it meant until you gave more, because you can. But you have to get outside of yourself, get outside of your head, and understand that there is more. And so, and a fun illustration that I thought of is driving stick shifts. I didn't know how to drive stick shift. My parents didn't teach me until I met my girlfriend Sierra. She knew how to drive stick shift. I didn't. It was a little humbling. So she taught me. And so, awesome. I think I shared the story last time of my first experience ever doing it. I was there. I was ready. All right, here we go. All right, clutch, first gear, and I'm going, and I stall out, and I'm like, all right, it's first time, it's good. Do it again. Same thing happens. Okay, I'm like, all right, get in the flesh, Jesus. Third time, I do it again, and I'm about to just like lose it, right? Sierra's about to see me like mad for the first time. No, I'm just kidding. And I realized the emergency brake was on the whole time. Okay, so, once we do that, once the emergency brake's in, we're good, we're going. And we were driving home the other day, and I was thinking about this, and it like hit me. And it was like, okay, when you're driving stick shift and you're in first gear, there's only so high, so many RPMs, the speed limit you could go high before you have to shift into a new gear, right? You can't shift from first gear to fifth gear, right? You can't shift from first to third, right? You have to shift into a new gear, and guess what? When the RPMs hit and you hear it, you shift into the next gear. And God is trying to signal you, your car's making all this noise. He wants to shift you into a new gear, but you don't want it, right? Some of us, and this is me. I mean, I've known I wanted to do this my whole life. Being up here, not even being up here, being in ministry, man, with your kids. I teach the kids. I do whatever's needed of me, and it's amazing. It's what I want to do my whole life. And I went to college for it, and it seems like, yeah, it's, everybody tells me, man, you did it all. But there's been times where I would sit in my dorm room and I'm like, man, like, I don't know if I'm ready to just do this yet. Like, I'm young, I do all the disqualifications like we all do with ourselves. I'm young, I don't know enough, I'm not smart enough. People are going to think I don't know what I'm talking about. And there was a time where I literally tried to do everything I could without making it known that I was just trying to wait. Just hold it off, right? Just hold it off, right? I need to shift into second gear, but I want to stay here because I don't want to go faster, right? And I feel like with our church, this is a message for our church. This is a word for our church that God is going to shift us into another gear, but you have to be prepared to take action and shift into the new gear, right? God gives you the keys, God gives you the gas. Now it's on you to take some action. And again, He loves you. You can be saved without doing a thing. You could sit on your butt your whole life and you're going to heaven and Jesus loves you. But it's not until you take action that you will realize, man, there is a purpose for me bigger than I ever knew. And yeah, it's going to be hard. And there's going to be tribulations. There's going to be maybe 50, 70 years before the flood comes. But it's what you do in the time of waiting that makes all the difference when Jesus gives you that new responsibility. Because how many of us know when we go into a new season, a new level, it's a new level of responsibility, and it's scary. Because it's not always going to be great. It's not always going to be perfect. That's where the faith comes in. So Noah understood that he had to have action in his time of waiting, because if he didn't, his whole family was going to die. Right? Some of us are in that place where if we don't do something now, it's going to have repercussions that will last a lifetime. And that doesn't mean that God's doing that to you. It just means that you're in a place where God's saying, all right, let's go to this new season. Are you ready to go? Come on. He's always there. Like, I always just picture Jesus like, come on. there's more. There's more for you, right? But again, you have to go through each gear before you get to fifth gear. You can't just jump. God's going to take us. He's never going to give you too much, and sometimes he will. And you know what? It's in those moments where we learn the most. So Noah understood this. We need to prepare our hearts and our lives for God to move drastically. And that's what the action is. It's getting your heart ready. When you're expectant for something, what do? You prepare for it. When we're expectant, I'm expectant of this church to explode. I'm expectant of God to do something amazing in the city. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to prepare my heart, my family, for all these things to come. Because that's what it is in the waiting. And we're going to get into the third point, and it's patience. So the second point of the fundamentals of expectancy is action, and the third is patience. And this is probably the hardest one there is. Because acting on something is hard because we're afraid to fail. But being patient when God says he's going to do something is even harder. And this one was hard for me, this point, because I'm thinking about, man, that when the people out there that are like, I'm just waiting on God, Noah could have done that. Just waiting on God, right? But what he did in the time of waiting is what made the difference in his life. And when people say, being patient, sometimes they mix it up with not doing anything. But in the time of being patient is the time where we need to be preparing ourselves for what's to come. And so James 5:8 says this, "You also must be patient. Keep your hopes high, for the day of the Lord is coming near." And this applies to the story with Noah. He knew God was coming. There's a different context in this verse, but he knew God was coming because God told him. The Israelites knew what God had for them, but they decided to take a different path. Noah decided to trust in God. And so we're going to go through a little timeline of Noah's life here. And so Noah was 480 years old, and God gave him the 120-year warning that there will be a flood. So 20 years later, when Noah hits 500 years old, it says he's going to have 3 sons. When Noah turns 502 years old, he has his first son. His name is Shem. Because we know he was 502 because it says 2 years after the flood, Shem turned 100. And so he was 98 when the flood happened. When Noah was 500, it says approximately 500 to 506 years old, Ham and Japheth were both born. Ham is the middle, Japheth is the youngest. Now, a few years later, when Noah was 520 to approximately 540 years old, all his sons were old enough to now be married and to pretty much carry their weight. God wanted to make sure that his sons were old enough to be married so I'm sure they could help him build the dang ark. I wouldn't think Noah would do it by himself. My dad used to tell me, man, I probably shouldn't share it, but I am. My dad used to tell me, sons are pretty much meant to be your servants, or he would say slaves in a sense of messing around, just messing with us. But pretty much he's like, hey, God gave me you guys so you can do the work. So now we scoot forward. Approximately 55 to 75 years before the flood, God tells Noah to build an ark. So imagine those years before that. The world's going to end, and yet you don't know what you're going to do yet. You're just sitting there, living your life, and it's like, man, God hasn't spoken yet, so I may as well just sit back and do nothing, right? Or maybe I should spend time preparing, spend time acting on something, doing something, even if I'm failing, but I'm doing something in the time of waiting because I'm expectant that God's going to do what he said he was going to do. So Noah had to be patient through 120 years and have faith that God was going to do what he said he was going to do. And in our society today, we get pretty angry when we have to wait longer. I know me. When we come to work in the mornings, some mornings we mobile order Starbucks. Now you can do that. You go on your phone and you send in your order. By the time you get there, you hop out and you get your Starbucks. And so, man, we're going to Starbucks, and I'm like, all right, cool. We mobile ordered our stuff, and it's going to be ready. And I get in there, and there's like 50 people in front of me, and all the drinks are messed up, and I'm like, all right, I'm mad. Wow, right? Because of that. But imagine if I had to be patient for an expectation of God to move in 20 years, in 30 years. What if God appeared and said, hey, I'm going to, this city is going to blow up drastically in an amazing way. It's going to be in 20 years, though. And now it's up to you. What are you going to do to prepare your people, to prepare your city for what's going to happen? Because it's really easy to say, all right, well, when it happens, it's going to happen. I know a lot of people like that. Sometimes I'm like that. Well, he said he's going to do it, but, we'll wait and see. And once he does it, then I'll get prepared, right? Because the God of the universe needs to prove to me that he's good enough for me to start acting, right? And so, yeah, got a little ahead of myself there. All right, awesome. And so another little illustration that came to mind, and I'm almost done here, is imagine if Jesus was going to come to your house, all right, in 1 week, this Saturday or whatever, 5 days, 4 days, I'm not good at math. Jesus is coming to your house. He's going to have dinner with you. It's going to be an experience of a lifetime. It's going to be awesome. I'm pretty sure you're going to go home and clean up your dang house, right? I know my wife would make me. And so guess what? You clean your house, right? You make your bed. You make dinner. You're expectant for that day to come. What you do in that time of cleaning your house doesn't make the day come faster. But when the day does come, you're ready for it, right? You're ready for Jesus to enter into your home. You're ready to host him. Why? Not because you sat and waited. All right, well, when he shows up, because it's Jesus, right? If a famous star was going to come to your house, your favorite actor, athlete, whatever, you would want to make sure they think you got your stuff together, right? Like we talked about earlier, get all your strengths out, put all your weaknesses in the closet. All right, we're ready to go, man. This guy's going to think I'm the stuff, right? And so why not be ready? Prepare yourself, right? You're going to do all of these things to make sure when Jesus gets there, you're ready for him, right? And that's what Noah had to do. He had no other choice. It was that or death for his family. And he was in a place where he had to do something. It didn't make God love him more, right? He was favored in the eyes of God before he built the ark. He didn't build the ark and then gain favor in the eyes of the Lord, right? That's why I think it's really important that it says that first. Because God can use anybody. Again, he's going to use somebody who is diligent, somebody who is there having faith in him and letting that faith come out in their lives. It said Noah walked with God daily. Then God chose Noah and his family to build the ark. It's crazy. It's mind-blowing. And Noah was somebody who understood the things of God, and his promises don't come when we want them. They come when he says on his timing. And again, you can say, well, okay, well then I can say, I'm just waiting on God. Waiting on God. But why not be prepared for that time to come? Right? Something I didn't share at the beginning that I had here, and I'm going to do it now if it's okay to go back. I'm going to share the definition of hope. And it is a feeling of expectation and a desire for a certain thing to happen. All right? The definition of expectation now. A strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. Again, it's a feeling of expectation and a desire. You're desiring for this thing to happen. When I'm expecting God to move in my life, I'm desiring it. I'm ready for it. I'm not just going to sit and say, man, I want God to move in my life, but I'm just going to wait for him to do it. Then I'll be faithful, right? There's some people out there that are like, you know what, when I get rich, then I'll be there. Then I'll serve. Then I'll give, right? Just, when that happens, when God proves himself to me, because I'm Sam. I got it all going on. And God owes it to me. It's having an understanding that we did not deserve this life. Every single day you wake up and take a breath is a miracle and a blessing. Life is too short to just take it for granted. Granted. I just learned that today. I always say take it for granted. Like I'm into tabletops and stuff, like I'm a rock guy. Take it for granted. Life is too short. Why not do something for Jesus? And an expectation. Man, Jesus is going to do something amazing. Amazing. We were in a leadership staff development. Pastor Rob Spina came out for our staff meeting. And something that he hit on was, do you know who you're serving? And he was talking about, our pastors Ken and Eve. And do you need to understand who you're serving and their heart and their vision, because you can't have a church within a church. And it speaks so loudly here. When we understand who we're serving, it's not the love we give to Jesus, but it's understanding that whatever we do, we're loved. We need to know who we're serving. We need to know who this guy is. Because nobody wants to work for the guy who's a jerk, right? Man, you're going to hate going to work every day. When you know you're going to work and your boss would never fire you, even if you made the biggest mistake, you're going to be like, all right, cool. I'm going to work. I'm going to be there 30 minutes late too. No, I'm just kidding. And so, but again, you then have an expectation that when you get there, you know what's waiting for you. The Israelites knew what was waiting for them, yet they still just let it sit there and pass on. We know what's waiting for us, so why are we just sitting back and saying, yeah, I'm really comfortable. And man, expectation is crazy. And before I end, you really learn you really learn an expectation of God, who God is, when you're going through something that really looks impossible. And one of the things with the faith aspect of this is having faith for something that looks impossible. It's expecting the unexpected. And when Sierra and I first found out that she was pregnant, it was awesome. It was great. This is something that we haven't shared. I didn't tell her, so she might be mad at me. It was awesome. And about probably a month in, there were some complications. And, man, it looked like the dream was gone. It looked like, really, it was like, man, I was on the floor of my house weeping. Gosh. But it's understanding in the time when it looks so gone, you don't have any other choice but to have faith. And, man, Jesus is awesome. And so we prayed. We were praying. We were crying. It was awesome. And I could either take the option of accepting what it looked like, or I could take the option of trusting what God said. And I wasn't gonna give up on what I knew God gave me until He told me. Man. Awesome. And that's what it is. It's not being able to see it, but it's knowing it's gonna come. I knew my son was gonna be here. Just had an expectation of something that we can't see now or we couldn't even imagine. Let's expect the unexpected, because that's who Jesus is. If you guys want to stand, you can. I'm going to pray, and we're going to end with this song. Jesus, we love you and we thank you. We are going to enter into this season with expectation, not how it looks from our perspective, but how you said it looks. I'm going to stand on your word and know that what you said was going to be is going to be. I'm not going to make the mistake the Israelites made just because it looked scary, just because it looked hard. I'm going to step into the new season. We are going to step into this new season knowing what's there waiting for us. Trials, tribulation, mountains. But who better than to serve the mover of mountains? Jesus, we love you and we thank you for everybody in this house tonight. In your mighty name we pray.